You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast at savage.love.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
Addison Smith got engaged, everybody. Smith, you know Addison Smith, the host of In Focus with Addison Smith on the Real Talk Radio Network. That's Charlie Kirk and Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon's outfit. His show is on every day. I checked. It's an actual show on every day from 3 to 4 a.m. So, yeah, not exactly prime radio real estate. Addison claims he's the youngest talk show host in America, and since I can't cut Addison in half and count the rings, there is no way for me to verify that. But what Addison may be most famous for, at least as of last week, was the tweet he posted announcing his engagement. Pride Month is so defeated, Addison tweeted out, along with a photo of him proposing to his girlfriend in June. And his girlfriend apparently said yes to the mess. What Addison would have us believe, the assertion he's making to his followers, is that gay people don't want straight people to be straight? That we don't want you to date each other or get married or have kids? And like so much else from the right, the pure projection. They don't want us, right-wing straight people don't want gay people to date or get married or have kids. We're fine with you getting married and having kids and doing all of the things. Love is love, as they say. But I think the most important message here, the one Addison was really invested in getting across, is that Addison Smith got engaged to a lady with lady parts. But I gotta say, Addison, Addie baby, if all you're thinking about when you get down on one knee to propose to your girlfriend is how much the guys whose dicks you totally don't want to get down on both knees to suck are going to be saddened to learn you're marrying a lady, which means they're going to have to find other guys, maybe at Pride, which remains undefeated, to suck their dicks, because Addison Smith is a lot of things, the youngest talk show host in America and a troll and a homophobe, but Addison Smith is not a cocksucker. We all know how this ends, right? Addison Smith, right now, is running around bragging about how he totally owned the queerdo libtards because his tweet did get a big reaction online. But Addison is young, and so Addison doesn't know how this story, how stories like his almost invariably play out over time. He may not know where and how this ends, but we know where and how this ends. It ends in a truck stop, or in a bathroom, or in a hotel room, or in a rent boy. Speaking of pride, which I predict will outlive Addison Smith's marriage and Addison Smith's heterosexuality, there is a bakery here in Seattle that is selling rainbow croissants that look amazing. They looked so amazing when I saw them online. I went and got some. I don't know how they do it. It's a normal croissant on the outside, but it becomes this little pride parade of a croissant when you pull it apart. Like the end of Addison Smith's story, the jewel-toned colors of the rainbow flag are baked in. I saw another post on social media about Pride last week. A lesbian on Threads saying that she didn't like listening to the complaints of right-wingers about all the rainbows everywhere in June. She didn't want to give the haters an inch, but after riding a rainbow-striped subway car to the airport and boarding a plane covered with a giant rainbow decal and being handed a rainbow cocktail napkin along with her Pride-themed pre-flight rainbow cocktail, she found herself wondering how much affirmation was too much affirmation and where the affirmation ends and the marketing begins. I was thinking the same thing as I waited for the light to change at the rainbow-striped crosswalk under the rainbow banners hanging from the light poles, wondering whether the cop in the rainbow-striped squad car was going to give me a ticket if I decided to jaywalk on my way to the bakery to pick up some rainbow-striped croissants. Yeah, sometimes a lot of rainbows. That's the complaint. If corporations and city governments ignore us, they don't put up the rainbow flag, we feel slighted. If right-wingers scare them off, see Bud Light, we feel outraged by the betrayal. But when they pile it on, we feel patronized somehow. The sweet spot, not too much rainbow, not too little rainbow, just the right amount of rainbow, has never been hit. That said, it is really easy for us in the West to be cynical about this stuff, about pride, about the rainbow cocktails and rainbow subway cars and rainbow croissants, and be jaded, roll our eyes. I was reminded of that when I got a call this week from a listener in Kyiv. I'm just going to play the call for you now.
Hi, Dan. At the beginning of your next episode, can you please talk about the Pride March, the Equality Pride March in Ukraine? It was the world's shortest and probably most essential Pride March. We walked for 100 meters. We were allowed to walk for 100 meters. We literally crossed a street, but every single step meant the world to us. There were queer soldiers who are protecting our land and our people on the front lines every day. There were the loved ones of soldiers. There were queer people of Ukraine who just want to live in a free country and just want to get away from the Russian colonial anti-gay propaganda and agenda. So please, it would mean so much to so many of us if you just share your words of support.
A reminder to my fellow Americans, the authoritarians here who threaten our democracy and our freedoms, they first fell in love with Putin and Putinism when he passed Russia's Don't Say Gay law in 2013. That's how much they hate us, still. Which makes pride, and all of its sometimes ridiculous excess, necessary and important and meaningful still. So, happy Pride, everybody. A shout out to all the brave LGBT people and allies who marched in Kyiv's Pride Parade earlier this month. Your bravery, your longing to enjoy the freedoms we have here and sometimes take for granted even as they are under threat, your bravery is an inspiration to queer people all over the world. So yeah, I am going to shout out my listeners in Kyiv. I'm wishing you a happy Pride and a free and whole and liberated Ukraine. Quick programming note, we're going to be on vacation next week. Me and Nancy and the tech-savvy at-risk youth are heading off to enjoy the holiday in a secret, undisclosed location, so we will not have a new Lovecast for you next Tuesday. Magnum subs next Tuesday. We'll get a new Sex and Politics, my conversation with Amanda Marcotte, senior political writer for Salon. Look for that in your feeds, Magnum subs. On Tuesday, if you'd like to become a Magnum sub, you can become a Magnum sub right now at savage.love/subscribe. All right, coming up on today's show, on the micro, tons of your Qs, lots of my As, and joining me on the Magnum, Leo Hererra is back. He has a new book out called Analog Cruising. Leo is on a mission to get gay and bi men off the apps and back into the three big Bs, the bathhouses, the backrooms, and the bars. Leo and I talk about what apps did for us, what they've cost us, and how gay and bi men can strike a balance between the apps and IRL cruising. All that coming up on today's show. This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Dipsea. Dipsea is an app full of hundreds of short, sexy audio stories designed by women for women. Get an extended 30-day free trial when you go to dipseastories.com/savage. This episode is brought to you by Helix Sleep, the very best mattress designed with your comfort in mind. Get up to 30% off a mattress purchase plus 2 free pillows at helixsleep.com/savage.
Hi, Dan. I am a woman in my early 30s, married to a man in his early 30s. We've been together about 10 years now and have been either talking about or acting on non-monogamy for about the past 5 years. My question is around how to make sure we're consuming reputable and quality content when it comes to topics like non-monogamy, sex, sexuality, etc. I ask this because my husband and I have very differing interests in non-monogamy. For me, it's more of a hobby. For him, it's more of an identity. In the last year, my husband has really leaned into this identity and has been taking workshops and classes and done some coaching sessions, and I think that's great. More recently, he approached me about a coaching series he wants to start with a woman who talks a lot about divine femininity and masculinity and coaches men specifically to usher them into their dark masculine. It's a lot of terms I'm unfamiliar with, but it raises a lot of red flags for me because I grew up in a really religious and extremist environment for the first 20 years of my life. And so now I tend to really stay away from anything even remotely spiritual. My husband had been the same, but obviously that's starting to change. But I do have a lot of concerns when it comes to people spouting their ideas as fact. And I get a little tingling about, is this a cult? And I recognize that could be my own triggers. But when I looked into this woman more, I can't really find any credentials. I can't really understand what training she's undergone to be able to offer these coaching services at a very expensive price. And I recognize that in the sex positive and, sexual space, there may not be credentials or licensures that people can point to. And I totally understand that. But it brings me back to my question of how do we make sure that we stay open-minded and are sex positive, but how do we take in content from sources that are quality and reputable and not just the musings of a future cult leader?
Anybody can call themselves a life coach, just like anybody can call themselves a sexpert or an advice columnist. There is no credentializing agency. There's no bar exam. There's no Better Business Bureau rankings. There's no union. All there is your gut. And if your gut is telling you that this very expensive series being taught by this woman about divine femininity and dark masculinity is a bunch of creepy woo-woo nonsense that perhaps traffics in or embraces or reinforces gendered stereotypes about male and female souls and you want no part of it, don't fucking go. Doesn't sound like you could stop your husband from going. There's some need in your husband to make what you guys are doing, non-monogamy, an open relationship, not just the relationship model that works for you guys, but some woo-woo, higher calling, elevated emotional plane on which he now exists as a non-monogamous person. As you can hear, probably from the tone of my voice, that kind of gives me hives a little bit. Maybe for the same reason it's setting off your spidey senses. I grew up in a very fundamentalist Catholic, evangelical Catholic home, and there was a lot of woo-woo about all sorts of things. Encountered a lot of people who were telling me to believe things, to take them on faith, or to believe them because they were saying them. Encountering people who would pretend to know things that even I, as a fourth grader, could figure out that no one could actually, absolutely, with any certainty, know that thing that this person was telling me that they knew for sure, and that I was a bad person for having doubts or questions. And so, I wasn't one of those people who left the church and then found some church that had less of a problem with my homosexuality to fill the God-shaped hole in my heart. I just went out there to find some boys to fill the boy-shaped hole in my ass instead. And you and your husband, if your husband didn't need to make this woo-woo about non-monogamy, could just go out there and find some human-shaped people to fill the non-monogamous holes in your lives or your psyches or your relationship. But no, your husband wants to give it some transcendent meaning, wants to attach importance to it in this particular way. That shouldn't bother you. You shouldn't police the books or podcasts that he listens to. But at the moment your husband starts writing large checks to some life coach, woo-woo guru, that involves you. That requires your consent because you and your husband, I'm sure your finances are commingled, intermixed, and the spending that you engage in as individuals is something that the two of you together need to come to some rough agreement about it. Of course, everybody in a relationship, there shouldn't be a veto power, an absolute veto power that one person has over another person's spending. Everybody should have some mad money in the relationship that they can spend on shit that appeals to them, that may baffle or mystify their husband. See my husband's shoe collection. But large checks to some cult leader, potentially, you might want to stage a little intervention right there. You might want to do your due diligence, not your screw diligence, your due diligence. And if your husband refuses to do his own due diligence on his own behalf, as he contemplates writing these large checks to this woman, you're going to have to do it for him. And you may have to confront him with the evidence. You might find that this woman possibly, I'm not saying she is, but possibly could be, after you do your due diligence, you might discover that she is a charlatan, and you will have to throw that down in front of your husband.
Hi there, Dan and Nancy and the at-risk tech-savvy youth. I'm a woman calling from Canada in my 30s. I have a question about telling my in-laws about our polyamorous relationship. So, several years ago, my husband and I started conversations about my bisexuality and the potential for me to explore this by opening up our relationship. Over a year ago, I met an awesome woman and we're now in a loving relationship. My husband is very supportive and gets along well with my partner, and the relationship between my husband and I has never been better. Now for the confounding variables. My husband and I have a singleton and twins, 9 and under, and we live together with my in-laws. This includes a father-in-law with advanced dementia. My husband, girlfriend, and I would like to be open about our arrangement with my mother-in-law. My husband and I would like to involve my girlfriend in our daily lives more. Believe it or not, she's already enthusiastically involved with helping out with the kids. My mother-in-law is open-minded and prides herself in being a rebellious soul, but she still is a victim of her generation in some ways. She just turned 70. We are open with many of our friends and some family. We're currently lying by omission to my mother-in-law, however, by not keeping her or bringing her into the loop. Also, the longer we go without telling her, the worse her reaction could be in the case that she finds out in some roundabout way. And we can't really fold my girlfriend into our lives more without telling her, seeing as how we all live together. I should also note that my girlfriend and mother-in-law have met many times in sort of a different social situations, and my mother-in-law seems to genuinely enjoy my girlfriend. We don't want the in-laws to move out, as we plan on caring for them as they age in place. Additionally, my mother-in-law is an awesome support with our young children and is an important member of our family. We also spread the care for my father-in-law across all the adults in the house. We want to continue to foster a loving household for our family and include my girlfriend as another support to all of us and for us to her. As an aside, we'd like to explain our arrangement to the kiddos, but we can't really do that without Grandma knowing too. Any advice on how we might approach this conversation in hopes of getting my mother-in-law's buy-in? Do we need some sort of permission or okay from her as a valued member of the household? I'm thinking my husband should lead the charge in this conversation. My mother-in-law doesn't have a great history of being a good communicator. She sometimes resorts to passive aggressiveness. There's a chance that my mother-in-law will see this arrangement as very selfish or foolish, especially on my part, because it is her son after all. If she has a really negative reaction, it can mean losing her support with the kiddos and the household in the way that we've been enjoying living together now. Because of my parents' passing, my mother-in-law is a primary family support with the kids, and also we just really appreciate having her around and love her very much. But if she has a negative reaction, there could be some serious consequences. I get the feeling that it would probably be okay, but why not pass a question by you, Dan? Looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
If half the family knows that you're in a polyamorous triad with your husband of more than a decade and your girlfriend of more than a year, and other friends know and people in your orbit know, your mother-in-law is going to find out. So it isn't a question of whether or not to tell your mother-in-law. When you guys began coming out to other people, you tipped over some dominoes that would eventually mean you told mom. You told your mother-in-law. So you might as well get out in front of what is inevitable here, that your mother-in-law is going to find out about your girlfriend. And also what would be beneficial to you, which is your mother-in-law knowing about your girlfriend, so you can fold your girlfriend more fully into your family life. You seem to be placing too much emphasis, having too much concern with your mother-in-law having a negative reaction to the fact that you'd never mentioned whether she knows you're bi or not, but the fact that you and your husband, her son, are in a polyamorous relationship with another woman. And yeah, I guess there could be fallout from that if your mother-in-law takes her husband who is suffering from dementia and you and your husband have signed up to help care for it through the end of his life, and herself, who you've signed up to help care for through the end of her life, if she gets really fucking upset and decides to move out, all right, the only person she's really fucking over in an enormous way, if she were to do that, is her. So I'm not saying you should regard their dependence on you as a kind of leverage, but I think her awareness of their dependence on you and your kindness and generosity is going to factor into her thought process after you come out to her as poly and in a relationship with another woman. She is going to have to weigh, if she is prejudiced against poly people or bi people, she's going to have to weigh her prejudices against the people that she has come to know. And this is always how queer people, when we come out to our family and friends who didn't know we were queer, it's how we win, because we're standing in front of them. We're a person that they know and love. Maybe they were taught to believe things about the kind of people we are that they never would have challenged. There never would have been a moment's cognitive dissonance that caused them to reassess, but now they gotta reassess because there's what they believe, there's their prejudices, and there's us, their loving daughter-in-law who helps to take care of her ailing husband and this woman, your girlfriend, that she's also come to know and to like. So I would have some confidence in the lived experience of so many other queer people. Even if the initial reaction of your mother-in-law is a negative one, give her some time and some combo of reassessing her prejudice in the face of the people that she's come to know and love and depend on, and some awareness, perhaps slightly subconscious awareness of your generosity, kindness, but also her dependence on you in this stage of her life. Yeah, that's a lot of things that add up to a little bit of perhaps motivated reasoning on your mother-in-law's part to get past this and accept you. Now that you're a package on the porch she has to sign for. It's a fait accompli. You're in this relationship. And it'd be wonderful if she accepted it right away, signed for that package on the porch right away. But if it takes her a little bit of time, oh my God, we've all fucking been there. My mother, who is golden about gay stuff, P-flag mom, rainbow bumper stickers on her car, never had a rainbow bumper sticker on my car, initially didn't ever want to meet any guy I was dating. She came around and came around fast. So if your mother-in-law has a negative reaction, do what so many queer people have done in the past. Take a deep breath, let her ask all the questions that she needs to ask, even if they seem insensitive or unkind. Answer those questions as calmly as you can. Model for her the love you would like to receive from her, and give it a minute. Oh, and I've been there very recently. My husband's boyfriend, who lives with us, didn't tell his parents that he was dating a married man for the first 3 years of their relationship. And it was scary and nerve-wracking when he finally came out to them about the relationship that he's in. And last Christmas, they were at our house for Christmas Eve for dinner. They had a lot of questions for us. They had concerns. I would have been concerned if they didn't have concerns. They had concerns. We addressed them. Their concerns were resolved. And now everyone's on board. And it's nice and it's wonderful. But we had to walk through that very small fire. You might have to walk through a very small fire yourself. In the end, for that Christmas Eve dinner with everybody there, it's worth it. This episode is brought to you by Helix Sleep, makers of the best mattress in the world, also known as my favorite place, my mattress, where I wish I was right now and will be soon. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including their award-winning Luxe and Ultra Premium Elite collections, the Helix Plus, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and the Helix Kids mattress, designed for growing bodies and endorsed by child sleep experts. To figure out the best mattress for you, go take the Helix Sleep Quiz online. Just takes a couple of minutes. Your personalized mattress will be shipped straight to your door, free of charge. And for peace of mind, Helix offers a 100-night trial so you can try out your new Helix mattress and a 10 to 15-year warranty. Terry and I love our Midnight Luxe mattress because it is big enough to accommodate Both of us also big enough to accommodate very special guest stars, and that mattress can handle everything and everyone we throw at it. And when it's time to sleep, it is by far the most comfortable mattress we've ever slept on. Helix is offering up to 30% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/savage. That's helixsleep.com/savage. 30% off. This is their best offer yet. It won't last long. Go get that new mattress, because with Helix, better sleep starts now.
Hi, Dan. I'm a cis-het lady on the West Coast. I'm in my mid-30s. I'm calling because I have a friend that I love and care about so much, and then there's her boyfriend who I just really strongly feel is not good enough for her, mainly because he is dealing with some intense mental health issues and is not ready to get therapy or see a psychiatrist. And it's putting a lot of pressure on my friend to be his sole emotional support. And it's really pissing me off. I'm struggling with how I can bring this up to her in a loving way that is helpful to her and doesn't just feel like I'm shitting on her boyfriend, because he's not a bad person. He's unwell, but he's also refusing to get better. And I feel not treating my friend the way she deserves to be treated.
Shit on your friend's boyfriend. Shit away. Let loose. However you put it, however you try to couch or frame it, if your friend reacts defensively, takes it in the wrong way, even if you said it in the nicest possible, most considerate, careful way, they're going to regard it, they're going to take it as you taking a huge fucking dump on their boyfriend and their relationship. And so you might as well just be direct. Say the thing that you want to say. Your boyfriend is unwell. Your boyfriend has mental health challenges. You are not a therapist. You are not a counselor. You are not equipped to provide him with the help that he needs. He's on fire and you aren't the fire department. And yeah, sometimes you have to hear from someone else outside your relationship that what you think is going on inside your relationship is obviously to others not good for you, and in the end, not good for him. If he regards her as the reason why he doesn't have to seek help from a professional or seek the kind of help that might get him better, then the longer she's there beside him, the longer it delays him getting the help that he actually needs. Sometimes we get this into our head that this person who is on fire, we can't walk away from because they're on fire. And if that person realizes that we are staying with them because they're on fire, they don't have an incentive, and this can be a subconscious process, a conscious process, to put the fucking fire out. If I know, so long as I'm unemployed or unhealthy or fucked up or reeling, that you will be there for me, how do I keep you here for me? I keep fucking up. I keep reeling. I keep being unhealthy so that you continue to dance attendance upon me. It can be consciously a manipulative strategy to keep somebody in your life, to trap somebody in a relationship on the part of someone who's unwell. But I think often it's a subconscious, toxic, codependent dynamic. And if that's what's going on in your friend's relationship, she might not be able to see it, or might think that no one else can see it and hopes that in time she can persuade him to get better, or that she can magically fix him herself somehow. And hearing from you that she probably can't do that, and that she needs to get out of this relationship for her own sake and his, that might be what she needs. Sometimes we need permission from someone else to do a difficult thing, a hard thing, a thing that we think makes us look bad. I abandoned him when he was unwell. We need permission from our friends, from our family, from our support network to do that difficult thing that we worry others might interpret as a negative about us, and to hear from your best friend that not only am I not going to see it that way, but that it is a positive, that you will be, if she dumps him, on your advice, after you take this shit on her, that she will be taking care of herself and perhaps persuading him to go get help, to take care of himself in a way that she is not able to take care of him. Yeah, so shit away. Be direct. Send her the link to this episode of the podcast so that she can hear your question, where you're unselfconsciously speaking to your friend by speaking about your friend, and listen to my response too. It's a difficult position that you're in. This is a hard thing to do, and I feel for you, but this is what friends are for. This is a moment like this is when we need a friend to come through for us and say the hard thing. You want dirty talk? You want hot doms, rough and wild, forbidden fruit, my favorite kind? Dipsea has it. This episode is brought to you by Dipsea. Dipsea is an app full of hundreds of short, spicy audio stories. Dipsea brings scenarios to life with immersive soundscapes and realistic characters. Discover stories about second chance romances, adventurous vacation flings, and hot and heavy hookups at Dipsea. They've also got a growing library of fantasy series with werewolves, Regency-era historical fiction, and fairy smut to explore the bounds of your pleasure and your imagination. I'm actually just a little bit jealous because this kind of thing, erotica, dirty stories, that's my jam. But Dipsea is really pitched to and centers women. Come on, Dipsea, throw us fellas a bone. Oh, wait. There's a him and him category, also a Greek gods category. So, bone thrown, guys. New content released every week. So in between listening to your favorite stories again and again, you can always find something new to explore. Dipsea offers a modern approach to romance through high quality and captivating audio fiction. For listeners of this show, Dipsea is offering an extended 30-day free trial when you go to dipseastories.com/savage. That's 30 days of full access for free when you go to dipseastories.com/savage. Let them know the Lovecast sent you. dipseastories.com/savage.
Hi, Dan. I'm in a relationship with a man that we've been dating almost 3 years now. And from the beginning, we've talked about non-monogamy. He came out of a long marriage thinking that he wanted to be ethically non-monogamous. And we pretty much have been monogamous over these 3 years, except for we have experimented with threesomes, and he's encouraged me to play with other people in hopes that in doing so, I will kind of shift my perspective on non-monogamy and become open to him dating other people. So now we're at a point where he is seeing someone else, and he's only been with her 3 times, but every time I have an extremely physical trauma response, like sick to my stomach, throw up, feel like my world is ending a little bit. And yeah, I feel like I can't do it again. And then we go through a cycle of like trying to be monogamous again. And then he expresses his desire for wanting to try this again. And I say, I'm willing. And then we do it again. The same thing happens again. And I'm just not warming up to it. What I'm wondering is there a way to change how I feel about him being with someone else? I understand like all the arguments for non-monogamy rationally, intellectually, it makes sense to me. But when it comes down to experiencing it, it's like very painful for me. Maybe from some of the trauma I've experienced earlier in life with relationships, my family relationships, as well as with loved ones. But as it comes down to it, it feels like there's no compromise between monogamy and non-monogamy. And either I have to find a way to be okay with it, or he has to agree to be monogamous, or we have to end our relationship, which neither of us want to do. Do you have any advice?
I've said before, there's no compromise between monogamy and non-monogamy. Kind of a binary. You're either monogamous or you're not. But actually, there are a lot of couples out there who regard we only play together as a compromise between monogamy and non-monogamy. There are couples out there who regard we only play together as another, like have threesomes together with both of us there, who regard that not as non-monogamy at all. That's monogamy. We always have sex with each other and sometimes somebody else together, but we are having sex with each other at those times. And maybe that's the compromise for you guys between monogamy and non-monogamy. You say that when your boyfriend of 3 years is on a date with another woman by himself, you have a trauma response. You get sick to your stomach, you throw up, you feel like your world is ending. And then I would like to pipe in to say, your world didn't end 3 times. You thought your world was ending, didn't end. He came back, world didn't end. But somehow that's not sinking in. You're not confident that if he goes out on a date with somebody else, that the world won't end and he is going to come back to you just like he's come back to you the last 3 times. But you don't say that you had that response when you had threesomes with him. You apparently enjoyed the threesomes that you had with him. And so maybe for the two of you, that's the workable compromise for now, perhaps forever, between monogamy and non-monogamy. Is that a satisfactory compromise for him, though? Because what he said he wanted going into this relationship wasn't the occasional threesome. He wanted an open relationship and a polyamorous relationship. So what he wants ultimately is to be with someone and have the freedom to be with other people, not in one-off or threesome situations, but to date other women. And if threesomes are something that you enjoy, then having threesomes isn't necessarily much of a compromise for you. If polyamory is what he wants, only having threesomes is going to be a significant compromise for him. So even though we've kind of demarcated here a middle ground between monogamy and non-monogamy, still someone is going to have to pay the price of admission here. He's either going to have to agree to only see other people with you present and maybe not have relationships, ongoing relationships, independent of his relationship with you, with other people, which is what he wants, or you're going to have to agree to work through this trauma response, to get a little cognitive behavioral therapy, to attach meaning and import and weight, to be able to self-soothe when he's out with other people or another woman by reminding yourself that every other time this has happened and you thought your world was ending and your lunch was coming up, your lunch may have come up, but your world didn't end because he did indeed come back to you.
Hi, Dan. Here's my question in a nutshell. Is it possible to have more than one great love in one's lifetime? I understand it's not like there's just the one out there for us. I've loved before. I'm in my 60s. I know I'll love again. But last year, I fell in love with someone like I have never loved someone before. Not to this extent, this level. And he felt the same way towards me. But he's married, and even though he's unhappy in his marriage, for various reasons, he won't leave it. I can't be a mistress. And I feel guilty at even the thought of wishing to break up anyone's marriage, no matter how much I want to be with him. So I'm dating, and there's someone that I'm starting to have loving feelings for, but I know it'll never be like the feelings I had for this guy from last year. I don't know if I'll ever feel that again. I know it was just a short duration of half a year that this guy and I had an emotional and a very brief sexual relationship. And I've listed for myself all the reasons why he would not be the best guy for me. But still, 9 months later, I'm just not over him. I don't want to think this was all I get for the great love of my life was just a few months. Is there a chance of having a love like this again?
Life is long and messy, and also life is short. Why not be a mistress? I was just listening to a podcast about Nell Gwyn, Noble Blood, the podcast, Dana Schwartz's wonderful podcast about royal scandals and tragedies. Nell Gwyn was Charles II's mistress. Now, there are a lot of perks to being a royal mistress. The children that Nell Gwyn had with Charles II were given titles. Her descendants are part of the British aristocracy. That's obviously not in the offing here, because this guy, whoever he was, is not the King of England, and you're not in your childbearing years. But why the fuck not? Why the fuck not be a mistress? It may not be the ideal situation, but it may be what's best for you, not just because you'll get to be with this guy again, but because it might help you get over this guy. You ended this relationship after a few weeks, after a month and a half, I think you said. And so you ended it when you were still in the new relationship energy stage, the limerence phase. You were still besotted. The relationship was new and exciting and perfect, and you were falling in love, and then you ended it. And who knows, if you'd stayed with him, if you had compromised your values and become a royal mistress, maybe after 3 months, a little bit of the bloom would have gone off the rose, and you might still have loved him, but maybe that love would have been complicated by getting to know him a little better. And then the end of the relationship, if the end came, would be less painful because you wouldn't be looking back and remembering the relationship as perfect in every possible way, because the entirety of the relationship existed only in the NRE limerence stage of the relationship. So maybe as a strategy, having been this guy's mistress for just a little bit longer, if his reasons for staying in his marriage were good ones, and there are sometimes good reasons why people stay married and seek comfort or sexual release or emotional connections outside the marriage. There are good reasons that people might choose to stay together. And you didn't share any of the reasons that he gave, if he gave you any reasons for choosing to stay in his marriage that doesn't make him particularly happy. But if you assessed them and came to the conclusion that they were pretty good and decent, maybe even noble reasons for him to show his loyalty to his wife by staying married to her. We can show our loyalty to our spouses with things other than our genitals over the long course of a multi-decade marriage. Yeah, maybe you could have been his mistress. And oh my God, you're in your 60s. Yeah, you can have more than one great love in your life. I don't want to be ageist. I am almost in my 60s myself. I am not throwing stones at anybody's glass house here, but you're in your 60s. You can have more than one great love of your life, but the clock is ticking. You are running out of time. And if this was a great love, potentially, in your life, maybe it's going to be a great imperfect love. Maybe it's going to be a great complicated love. Maybe it's going to be a great love that requires concession, a compromise, an accommodation, a workaround, working around your values, working around his wife. So be still out there. Be still pining for you. My advice would be to get back together with him. All right, time for a little listener feedback. First up, some of the comments left on last week's show in the very lively comment threads at savage.love. Says Apple Scruff, Dan, you're a sex expert who is in the know about correct anatomical terminology, yet you continue to say vagina when you should be saying vulva. Be the change, man. Thank you for the reminder, Apple Scruff. I will try to do better in future. Says Patient Polyamorist, I disagree with Dan and Nancy on the orgasm centricity of the definitions offered to the caller asking about having sex in all the national parks. If it feels like sex, it is sex, has been my definition forever. Sometimes this leads to one sex partner having had sex and the other not having had sex, but such is the price of logical consistency. Also, many people struggle with orgasms, and taking the emphasis off the orgasm can lead to more pleasurable and just more sex. All right, we weren't trying to offend or erase people who struggle with orgasms when we offered that definition of sex. We were just doing our bit to help close the orgasm gap. The problem for millions of women out there with male partners aren't all the men placing too much emphasis on their orgasms, but all the men out there doing the opposite. I think everyone should go into sex assuming it's their responsibility to get their partner off, but if the person you're with tells you that they can't always come or don't need to come or don't want to come, we shouldn't regard them as broken or refuse to believe them when they tell us the sex that they're having or they want to have is pleasurable for them. Says Zoftig, I really enjoyed the conversation with Liz Lenz and have so many thoughts, but the one that immediately stood out is whether people in happy marriages are actually doing a disservice by not talking about their happy marriages. I have a touch of worst case scenario disorder, Zoftig goes on, and I feel you, Zoftig. I do too. Talking about happy marriages can feel like jinxing things, but are we, says Zoftig, those of us in happy marriages, sort of default allowing bad behavior to be normalized by not talking about our good marriages? Excellent question, Zoftig. People who complain about their marriages are common. People who brag about their marriages are somehow sus, perceived as overcompensating. Maybe that's a script we all need to work on flipping. All right, for more listener feedback, check out Struggle Session, where I respond to listener and reader comments. Goes up almost every Thursday at savage.love. And now, more listener feedback in the form of your response calls.
Hey, Dan, this is a comment for the guy who called in asking for advice about how he can make his girlfriend or partner feel more comfortable with her pussy so that he can go down on her. I thought your advice was great, and I just wanted to add, if she's open to it, try crotchless panties. I have, experienced some of the same hang-ups that this person's partner seems to be experiencing, and crotchless panties were a huge game changer for me. They do have to be the right cut in order for cunnilingus to really work, but when it does work, it's been great for me. It makes me feel a little bit less exposed, and the sexy lingerie gives me a total confidence boost. So maybe they could give that a shot.
This is in response to the woman from episode 921 who wants to be a dom to the men that she dates. I like what Dan said about kink and exploring kink and negotiation, but I almost got a sense that this woman wants dominant energy without fully going into the kink direction, and I wanted to just speak to my own experience in case that's helpful. I think what Dan said about female-led relationship, FLR, might be the closest label to what you're talking about, or at least what I think you're talking about. I'm a man who is a little bit more conventionally feminine in the sense that I like to be pursued. I like it when the women that I'm with take charge of their pleasure. I like it when my pleasure is still taken into account, but it's a little bit more receptive. I like being the one who kind of takes the pleasure, so to speak. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about, but I think that's what I heard you saying, and I just want you to know that there's dudes out there who like that. I don't think we're the majority by any means, but I just wanted to speak to that because it sounded like that's what you meant.
Hi, Dan. This is in response to episode 921, the woman living in Northern Europe who wants to get more comfortable with the idea of her boyfriend fucking another woman. I wanted to share that the way that I am comfortable with my husband fucking other women is that I have this private mentality of possession, which means that I know he's mine and I am loaning him out to these women for a little while. I also know that he's really good in bed, and how lucky is she to have a little taste of my husband?
And we're going to leave it there. We've got 3 ways for you to get us your questions or comments for future shows. You can record your question or comment at savage.love/askdan, or you can make a voice memo on your very own phone and email us your question or comment to q@savage.love, or you can call us on our landline and leave us a message at 206-302-2064. The Hump team wants to wish everybody a happy Pride and remind everyone that there's no better time than right now when you're feeling pumped after Pride to shoot and submit your film for Hump 2025. It's free to enter Hump, and filmmakers at Hump get paid. The filmmakers share a cut of every ticket sold, and Hump audiences award $10,000 in cash prizes to their favorite films. Submissions to Hump 2025 are due by December 6th. Go to humpfilmfest.com savagefilm for all the information that you need on submitting your dirty little masterpiece to the best dirty little film festival in the world. Follow me on Instagram and Threads at Dan Savage. Follow me at Blue Sky at Dan Savage, and I am still at the back place at Fake Dan Savage. Follow Leo Hererra on Instagram and Threads at Herrera Images. Also check out Leo's Substack, leoherrera.substack.com, and go pre-order Analog Cruising, his new book, now. The Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hartunian, and me and Nancy and the tech-savvy at-risk youth. We will all be back at you next week. No, wait, not next week. We will all be back at you week after next with a brand new edition of the Savage Lovecast. Look for that in your feeds on July 9th. Thank you so much for downloading.